This is 5-Minute Power Platform, where I'm doing short experiments, dynamics flow, power apps, and more. And today I'm going to build a game. If you've seen the Wreck-It Ralph 2 trailer, and I've got a link in the comments, he jumps into a kid's game called Pancake and Milkshake, and I thought that would be a fun one to build in Power Apps. Fortunately for me, since I don't have any graphic talent, somebody before me built all the graphics. And I reached out to Mothman64 on DeviantArt. Here's his portfolio page here. Be sure to check it out. And there's also a link to that in the comments. But he had built all the graphics and built actually a much more full-featured game on Flash. I asked him if I could use the graphics for this purpose, and he was nice enough to oblige. And so we're going to use his imagery, but build out the game in Power Apps. So a note on the assets that we'll be using from Mothman64. So these are, each character grows as they eat, and so we've got different images for different sizes from 0 to size 5. And then we've also got different modes of each image: animated eating, static when they're just sitting at the table, and then X when they've been poisoned by eating the wrong food. And so you can see them laid out here, and we'll be creating a collection which we'll use to reference these as we go through. And here's the kitties version as well. So you can see them animated once, and the different sizes and the different statuses. Here's a quick peek at the collections that we'll be defining with these images. So for each one, we're going to set a size and a status, whether it's animated, static, or poisoned. And we'll refer to the image assets we'll be uploading. So we'll be setting these up probably towards the middle of the build. And then we're going to use these 8 variables throughout the game: V bunny count and V kitty count. Those are the scores for each animal when they've eaten the food successfully. The status of both the bunny and the kitty, and that's going to show which image to show, whether they're static, animated, or poisoned. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the game over, so flag on whether the game has ended because something terminal has happened. And also the show game over, so that's a flag just to control our final game over banner after all the final animations have happened. A string to represent the current food: B for pancake, that's what the bunny eats, or K for milkshake, that's what the kitty eats. And then finally a variable to hold what character has been selected. Okay, so enough talk, let's start building. So we're going to create a blank app, mobile format, and we're going to set it to be landscape once it loads. And then just to get out of the way, we're going to save it and get that initial name put in there. So let's go ahead and save. We'll call this Pancake and Milkshake. Okay, now let's upload the media, and we have a lot of media to look at. So these are some of the assets created by Mothman64, including some sounds that we'll add in towards the end. So let's go into Browse in our media area, and we're just going to upload them all so we can start using them. Now back to our canvas. Let's go back there and we'll set the background image. And then we'll add a couple of chairs to the table. So we'll start by inserting an image, assigning it to, giving a name here. Let's call it chair B for the bunny's chair, assigning it the bunny's image. Let's see, it'll just shrink that chair back down. We'll copy and paste it, update that to the kitty's chair, move that in there, give it a name. Now we're ready to insert the characters themselves. So another image. This one will be the bunny, so we'll just choose one of the static images of the bunny so we can get a visual. We also need to make sure we get the size right. So looking at the GIF itself, it looks like it is 816 by 589. So let's set our image to 816 by 589. It's going to be way too big, but at least now we can resize it so that we can make sure the proportions will be right, so the imagery will look right. We'll move him up to the table, pull the chair up. He's looking good. Call him bunny. And then let's do the same one for the cat. And so we'll select a static image of the kitten. So I've got his dimensions written down. We'll resize him, shift resize, so we keep his dimensions, get him in place at the table, and maybe tweak that X a little bit just to get him a couple pixels over. And now we'll save this, and now we're ready to start adding on the food. So next we'll add on another image. We'll call this food. Oh, forgot to name the kitten. Get him named. And then we'll set that just to an image of the pancake so we can get an idea of where they sit, get them centered on the table. Okay, their center position is 525 on the X. Now the animation is usually done with a timer, so we're going to add in a food timer here. And we're just going to set the text to that. I just like to see the timer count down, so we'll set the text to be the value so we can watch it count down. And then what we'll do is we'll go over to our food image, and we're going to set the X position to subtract based upon the timer value. So now if we run this, we'll see that it cascades off the screen. Okay, let's set a max on the timer. And so we'll set the timer max to be how far we want it to move. It's about 180 pixels. Now it moves right over to the bunny. Let's make it move a little bit slower. So let's set that to twice as much, but we'll have it move every second click of the timer. So now it's timer value over 2. And now it moves a little slower over to the bunny. So now we're ready for the next step. Well, let's track which character the user clicks on. And so when on the on select on the bunny, we'll say set V pick character equals to B. And on the on select on the kitten, we'll do the same. We'll set v pick character equal to k, so we know which character. Now we can use those to tell the pancakes or the food which direction to move. And so we'll multiply the direction by either +1 or -1, depending on which character got chosen. And so now when we select a character, it ought to move in the right direction. So now we'll hook up the timer to drive off of that value. So we'll say when the pick character has a value, when it's not blank, the timer will start, and the timer will reset when pick character is blanked out. Looks good. Oh, but we need to initialize it now. So let's just put in a button that we could use just for while we're developing that can do this initialization. So we'll call this button start, and we'll have it initialize v pick character to nothing. And now we can send it that way, and now we've got our food going in the right direction. So now we can start using different images for our kitty and our bunny. So let's initialize those two variables that we're going to use to control it. One is the bunny status, which is which type of image to show, static, animated, or poisoned. The same for the kitty. And then let's also set the count, which will determine how big they get as they eat. So we've got bunny count equals 0 and kitty count equals 0 there. So let's initialize those, check them out, they look good. And then let's save this before we move on and start to use them. So now we need to initialize our collections of images. So we'll do call bunny pics, and we'll take the JSON for all of our bunny images. And I'm just going to paste that in here. It's going to take all those uploaded images and move them into a collection so that we can filter off of them. And we're going to do the same with the kitty pics. So let's paste in our JSON for those, and now we're going to have 2 collections. Now what we'll see when we look at our collections is that these exist, but they're not initialized. That's because that's all on the screen on start event. And so we'll need to close out of this and reopen it so that that on start fires. And now when we look at our collections, we should see that they're initialized so we can begin using them. That looks good. So now let's use those collections. So we'll set the image for the bunny to the first image returned from filtering the collection. And we're going to set the size equal to the count, the number of times it's successfully eaten, and the status equal to the status variable that we're setting. And so we need to initialize that. There we go. Set our start button to initialize that, and then we'll set the same over to the kitten. So we'll just copy and paste that over there. Change bunny to kitty, and kitten's ready to go. Let's add in a little debugging label so that we can tell which image is being shown. That'll just help us kind of as we're troubleshooting this. We'll add in a label, shrink the font, and we're going to set its text to be the bunny image. Shrink that down. Let's copy and paste, and we'll do one for the kitten as well. We'll set this one to be the kitten image. We'll update the food timer so that when the food timer is done, what it's going to do is it's going to set the character status to either to A. So based upon the character that was chosen, if it was B, we're going to set the bunny status to A, and that'll animate that character. And if it's the kitty, we'll set a kitty status to A, and that'll animate the kitten. Now as we test them here, we don't see it animate. So something I found is that editing does not equal playing. And so what will happen in the editor is it doesn't necessarily 100% always match when you're really playing it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to save and publish this, and let's test it out in the real play mode. So let's publish that. We'll come in here and let's take a look at it in play mode. Initialize it. And now we see our characters consistently animate every time it's brought over to them. Okay, so that's all working. So it's good. Even though we won't see it animate in the editor, we know that the images are updating. And we need to allow the app time to allow the anime GIFs to play and not take action until that's done. So to do that, we're going to insert another timer. This will be our character animation timer. So we'll set that here, we'll resize it, and we'll set the text to be the actual value of the timer so it's a little easier to watch count down. Call it T, character animation. And we're going to set this so that it starts whenever any of the character statuses move off of static and into animated. So we'll just say whenever the bunny status is not S, and whenever the kitty status is not S. And then when the timer is over, so on timer end, we're going to reset the status back to S, and that'll reset those images back to their static version. We'll just steal that code from here, put that in there. So we'll set that timer to 1000, we'll test it out, we'll see that our image flashed and moved to A back to S, so that all that's working. So we're going to get an animated version if we weren't in the editor. And so now let's increment each character's score here. So if we pick B, At this point, we can increment the bunny count, the bunny score. We'll do that by 1, and otherwise we'll increment the kitty score by 1. And that'll help us not only control the character size, but allow us to keep score between them. So now if we test this out really quickly, we should see the bunny gets bigger after he eats. So now when that's done, we can also clear out the pick character variable. And so when we do that, because we'll do that at the end of the animation timer, so we'll reset that so that the user can pick a new character. And because tfood has its reset property also tied to vpick character, that should move our food back to the center once we do that. So there we go. Okay, now we can make the food change between the pancake and the milkshake. And we'll do that when the animation's done. We'll allow a new food to be set. And so we'll use the rand function. So we'll say if rand, and rand is going to go between 0 and 1. So if it's less than half the time, that will give us, in this case, we'll set current food to B, which is going to be the pancake for the bunny. And if the other half of the time, we'll set it to the K, which is going to be the milkshake for the kitty. So this is going to be set when the animation's done. Now we want to clear this out when the animations start because we want the food to disappear because the animations themselves show the food. And so we don't want our image of the food to be showing. So let's snag that little bit of code there, and when the animation starts, we'll just clear out the current food. And so now we can apply that vCurrentFood variable to the food image itself. So let's come over here to the food. And where we set the image, we'll put an if statement. So if the current food is equal to the bunny, we'll show the bunny food down here. And then if it's otherwise, we're going to set it to the kitty food. So that should vary that image, and it already turned into a milkshake, so we're on the right path. And then let's set the visibility on this too. So when that variable is blank, we want the food to also not show. So we'll only show the food when not is blank is true. So we'll initialize that variable also with our start button. And so let's steal the code that has that random function in it. That's going to be from our timer end for our character animation timer. So we'll take that if statement, we'll drop it into the start button, and now when we click start, we should see the food alternate between the different options. So far, so good. So it looks pretty good. We're seeing the animation as the food goes in, the food disappears, and the animate GIF takes over. So now I made a wrong choice there. I fed the pancake to the kitty, and so now we need to make our app understand that choice and show the right graphic for that. And so what we'll do here is in our tfood timer on timer end, we'll put some logic in for that. And so here, if they pick character bunny, I'll put another if statement, and if the food is bunny, then we're good. Then we show the animation, so the bunny status equals A. Otherwise, we'll show bunny status equals X. And then we'll do the reverse for the kitty here. So in the else statement, if v current food equals K, then they're good. We'll show the kitty as animated. Otherwise, we show the kitty as poisoned with the status X. So let's test it out. Good. So we see the fail image there. So now let's initialize our game over variable. So every time that we set this to X, we'll also set game over equal to true, and then we'll use that to control the flow of the game. So here we'll say set game over equals true, and then we'll set it here as well. And then we'll initialize that to false when we start a new game. But most importantly, at the end of our timer, it looks like I got a problem over here. Let's fix this semicolon, right? Parenthesis. So now at the end of the character animation timer, we start a new round. And so we're going to make that timer so that it only does that step if game over is not true. And so that'll make it so that the round ends if we've got the flag to set game over. So let's feed milkshake to the bunny, it's game over, and the bunny stops. So the last step we have to do is to also set that status if either of our characters grows to size 5. At that point, then they get too full and they fill up and the game is over. So what we'll do is we'll set that flag in the food timer end. This is the same place we check if the user has selected the right food for the character. And so we'll say if either the bunny count or the kitty count has reached 5, then we'll set that game over flag. So finally, we need to add in some audio. And when Mothman64 put this all together for his app, he included some sounds, and we're able to use those here in the Power App. So I'm going to add an audio control. And for the media property, I'm just going to put in an if statement that sets it to either the bunny or the kitty's chewing sound, depending on which animal is in its active animation state, or a status of A. So we're going to set those here. And then we're going to cue that media to start when it's not the game over status and when either the bunny or the kitty is active. So we'll set that here. So it's not game over and bunny status is A or kitty status is A. Give that a quick test. Sounds good. Now we also have game over sounds. Let's add in another audio control. And we'll do a similar sort of thing, but this time we're going to trigger off the X status. So we'll set the media. We'll check to see if the bunny is in the X status, and if so, then we'll play the ending sound for the bunny. And we'll do the same then if for the else statement, we're going to do the K for the kitten. And then we'll trigger the on start whenever the game is over. Then we'll play the ending sound. And we're going to reset this sound if it's not game over. Right when game over gets reset from our start button, we'll reset the sound as well so it rewinds. And we can see we get the sound there when the kitty gets the pancakes. Poor kitty. Now there's another sound too. So when they get to their final size, there's a nice gross expanding sound. And so we'll add that in here too. And so we'll say if either the bunny count or the kitty count hits 5, then instead of playing the ending sound, we'll play the expanding sound. And so we'll add this in here. Now we can give it a quick test. Gotta get each one of these guys to grow here. So let's see if I can play the game without failing. And let's see, the bunny's at size 5. There we go. And there's our sound. Sounds good. Our final step is to add in the scores. So we'll add in a image here, and we'll make that be the pancakes. And next to it, we'll put a label. We're going to format this label so that it blends in a little bit more with the rest of the art. So we'll set it to the bunny count. We'll make it large, set it to white, and then we'll choose a more playful font like Patrick's hand. We're going to copy and paste both of those over to the kitty. We're going to change the pancakes to milkshake, and we'll update the count to pull off the kitty count. Now we have a score for each one of the animals, and we can copy and paste this label up here, and we can do an overall score just by adding the two together. We'll make it a little bit smaller so it fits. Let's see, it looks good, and we'll add in the bunny count. Now we get an overall score. And then finally, we can add in a timer for the overall game timer too. Now, normally this would count down because, if you're trying to beat the clock, but just to keep it simple and because everyone wants to make one of the animals blow up, we'll just make a count up to see how long it took you. So let's see, let's set this to Patrick's hand as well, bump the font size up. I don't think anyone's going to play this for hours, so we could just set the format to just minutes and seconds. And then we'll set the padding so we can squeeze it up here in the corner. And then we'll set the timer to start whenever it's not game over. So I should trigger it so that while the game is running, the timer is running. If the game ends like that, then the timer stops. And then the last thing we need to do is the game over banner. And so we'll put an image in here. We'll put in this game over graphic that Mothman64 created. And then what we'll do is want it so that when someone clicks on this, it triggers a new game. So we're going to take all of our code out of our start button on select and move it to the on select for this image. So we'll copy and paste that there. And now when we click on game over, we'll start a new game with all of our initialization that we need. We're also going to add that to the screen on start too, so that when the program loads, we have a new game running already. Finally, we've got to determine when we want to show the game over. So when our failure audio, when our second audio ends, what we'll do is we'll set a new variable, which is the show the game over screen. And then we've got to make sure we initialize that. So when someone clicks the game over banner, we're going to set that back to false so that it hides. And then we'll set the visible property equal to that show game over so that it makes itself invisible when you click on it. So now let's give it a test. Oh, we see the characters aren't visible. That's because we changed the screen's on start property, and sometimes that'll need to be reinitialized by closing it and restarting it. So let's close this out, save it and close it. and then reopen it so that on start reinitializes. And there's our character. So now we're looking good. So now let's give this a run through its paces. And oh, that's good. So the bunny's dead. Sound plays. Game over. Click, and it restarts. So it looks like we have a working app. Now let's see if we can make one of them explode by eating too much food. So it looks like the kitty's in the lead at 4. 5, here it goes, up, and it's over for the kitty. All right, so let's shrink that game over a little bit. It was looking a little pixelated. We'll put it there. And then we'll save this and publish it, and we can test it out on an iPhone. Here we go. We'll open it up on an iPhone. Kitty, bunny gets pancakes, bunny gets pancakes, kitty, milkshake, pancakes, 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 up, or bunny. That's good. All right, so we have a working app. Thanks for watching.